Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
And let's see if I can switch. Good evening on a Wednesday. Good evening on a Wednesday. Chris and I have a few questions left remaining from Monday. If you were here with us, burning questions got going a little late. So we've each got a few left to throw around. And then if anybody else has anything, today's the day. Fan-led Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. Got a chance to talk to quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter today for the the standard Wednesday press conference with the assistant coaches. Pretty productive. Chris, I think I did tell you this after the game. I know I told Trent because it happened, and I didn't want to put it out there like right when it happened because it just seemed kind of weird. And I didn't, obviously if Michigan somehow didn't beat Ohio State, it wouldn't have been very well received. But on Saturday, before the game started, standard, we got there really early, probably close to the earliest arrival we've had all year for obvious reasons. For traffic wouldn't really allow for it for a little while there. But anyway, so we're in the press box. Trent and I are up there. We're set up. We're getting food, whatever. It's probably like an hour before the game, maybe a little closer than that even. And I go to the bathroom, and Kirk Campbell is in there in the bathroom, just the standard regular old bathroom up there because, I don't know. There's a handful of assistants that are up in the booth. And Chris, I know you remember this 3 years ago when you were in the booth when Michigan finally broke through and beat Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
Just come screaming down the press box, F-bomb. I mean, as pumped as I've ever seen grown men over any. So they're just up there. They're just milling around with you. They're only a few doors down the hallway as they're doing what they do for the game. And Kirk Campbell's in the bathroom. I don't know Kirk Campbell at all, but I'm guessing maybe he just recognized me from a press conference. I don't know. I've got my glasses. Maybe it's a signature look. I'm not sure, but he's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Or maybe he was just being nice. I don't know. "Hey, man, how you doing?" while we're washing our hands. I'm like, "Hey, what's up, coach?" And he's like, "Let's go get a fucking win today." Like the most egregious, aggressive. And he's a pretty low-key guy. He's pretty chill at the podium. Doesn't really get too high or low when he's talking. And I probably jumped back because he was so fired up about getting a win and just locked into the game. Then he just kind of comes storming out, blasts the door, and the rest is history, as they say. So he was a little different today at the podium than he was in the bathroom. I guess that was my point.
Yeah, I mean, typically conduct at the podium is slightly different than what you might see in the restroom. So don't really have much more to add to it than that.
In a lot of ways, perhaps. In a lot of ways, perhaps. No, but it was. I don't know. I didn't expect him to say anything to me, and then he was just so pumped up, which is to be expected for that one, obviously. And I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. Then obviously they go on to win the game, and it was fitting. So there you go. But some pretty good stuff from him today, pretty good stuff from Jesse Minter today. And, just kind of in general, I mean, it's just, I every Wednesday I do go on the radio with Jamie. And when you just sitting there and recapping and thinking back all the stuff that Michigan overcame this year to win and then to kind of cap it off with that win on Saturday, it's it's incredible, dude. They should not be where they're at.
Yeah.
That's kind of the conclusion that I got to. And sure, a lot of it was self-inflicted with this Connor Stalions stuff and the whether you think it's serious or not, nobody else did that to Michigan. They did do it. I'm not trying to cry victim here, but still, to be without your head coach for 6 games, to be where they're at, to win the 3 games that they just won with Sharon Moore running the show, it's insane. When you really sit back and think about it, it is insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I said on Monday. I think, this whole stretch going back to when the scandal first broke and Michigan was in the headlines and it looked a little bit uncertain what it would mean for Michigan's season. You had the Big Ten putting out statements about notifying future opponents. You had the NCAA announcing, or everybody knew that the NCAA was investigating the Michigan football program. And once again, you go into the biggest stretch of the year, the final 3 games of the season, at Penn State, at Maryland, back home against Ohio State, and you do it without your head coach, and you have all this stuff swirling around the program, and these guys, they just know how to handle their business. This is one of the luxuries you have when you have a veteran-led team, a team that's, I know there's a handful of captains on this team, but you can make an argument that there's 20 plus captain caliber type guys on this roster, and I think that that's a luxury that Michigan fans, as they've watched this team this year and battle through adversity and come out on top time and time again, I think it's finally now starting to set in. Of course, the win over Ohio State helps put a lot of it into perspective, but starting to set in just how special this group really is and how you really got to cherish these moments, because you can't count on it next year, the year after that. Like this is a pretty special stretch for Michigan football over the last 3 years, and it's incredible to be a part of it.
Yeah, I can't remember which coach it was today, actually. That I think it was Jesse Minter, but he kind of addressed some of the stuff you brought up before, just like the magnitude of that game and how everything's going to be so different moving forward with the expanded playoff and no more divisions and just all these different changes. He was sometimes coaches, for whatever reason, they just dodge questions. They don't give you like a straight answer. And he was pretty upfront. He's like, no, that one we just played, that's like the biggest one maybe ever, and it's probably bigger than it's ever going to be again. Yeah, and I think you've talked about that, and just kind of the whole season in general kind of had that feel because of all the stuff that Michigan kind of dealt with. So yeah, pretty special. Chris, I asked you this before we went live, but let's let the people know. How are you feeling, man? No man Moses tonight. I think you're taking it easy again.
Another night off. No man Moses tonight, man. I thought I was on the mend Monday evening, and then it's been a struggle this week. So I'm trying to hydrate, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of water. We'll be good to go for Indy. But yeah, man, like me, my wife, my kids went through it pretty quickly, but still battling a little bit. But there's a job to be done. There's work to be done. There's a phenomenal team to cover, and I'm happy to be doing it.
Job's not finished.
Appreciate you asking, Kristen.
Yeah, job's not finished, as they say.
Job is not.
Apparently, Trent Knoop. We may know who this is. What do we make of the 5-star defensive tackle Justin Scott just now flipping from Ohio State to Miami? Trent, if you care to, I can send you an invite. You can jump in with us right now.
Well, from what I understand, he's at home right now. He's playing. He's on dad duty. He's got his kid with him. Yep. His wife is out of the house tonight, and he thought it might be better to not have a child disrupting the broadcast tonight, which I appreciate. So
yeah, no, that's no problem. It seems like Trent was pretty well received. I had a couple people say he's like he was like the bear. That's what he's like, the bear with the facts and the figures and the
info guy, a stats guy, a guy that brings some substance to a lot of the BS.
There you go. So anyway, to his question, I actually didn't see that. He said it just happened. He said it at 7:04. Kid's very, very impressive, by the way. I believe Michigan was in his final group too. Yep. I don't know. What do you make of it? Ohio State's still going to be a pretty good program in the foreseeable future. There's always a little bit of this panic thing with recruits, but
I don't think it has anything much to do with the outcome from Saturday's game. I think that I don't want to speculate too much, but my gut tells me that there's probably some money that's involved there, and that's kind of where we're at with college football. And so, it is what it is. Anytime Ohio State can take an L, whether it's on the field or the recruiting trail, I'm here for it. So, what do I make of it? I make that it's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah. I would rather him go to Miami than Ohio State, so I'm cool with it. Yeah. And that's not something that
I was just going to say, Ohio State's been putting together, a phenomenal recruiting class. Yes. So, you as many guys as they can lose, I think we'll take it.
It's not something they deal with often, where big timers leave their commitment and go somewhere else. Ohio State's been one of the 1 or 2, 3 best recruiting programs in the country for a decade plus. It's them, Georgia, Bama. They've been kind of crushing it more than anybody else for a long time. I didn't notice. Darren brings up, is there a problem with the Facebook stream? Try to let us. We're 10 minutes in. Let us know now if there is.
The only problem I could see so far is this goddamn spam. I've started to see this stuff lately now. Like, sometimes it's links. Now we've got people claiming they've got, cancer for.
I saw that the other day. Yeah.
You got another one showing up here. The internet, listen, the internet has always been a weird and wild place, but goddamn, it just continues to get weirder and weirder, doesn't it? I mean, the t-shirt bots, these people that are putting in dead links, the women that show up. I see this all the time on the Facebook page. You've got these, listen, I'm not trying to like burst anyone's bubble out there, but if you're commenting on the winged helmet and then some like model looking chick says, hey, what's up? Like, would like to get to know you a little bit better. Like, don't interact with that person. That's not real. And there's a lot of that going on these days. Doing everything I can to Matt Kirby got a Tinder date out of it. Well, kudos to you, my friend.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, I don't know. I see people commenting from the Facebook page, so I don't know if anything's wrong with it. Keep us posted if there is. I don't know. It looks like it's working on my end.
Yeah, maybe refresh your browser.
Yeah, that could be about it. Let's see.
Yeah, we haven't send your routing and account number. Some prince from overseas.
The African prince is ready to. Yeah, he needs you to launder some money.
I inherited billions. I just need an account to put it in. If you could be so kind, sir.
Good question here from Colin Barron, and it's one that I've thought about quite a bit. These 3 games that JJ has played without Jim Harbaugh. Colin asks, do we think that JJ is going to be throwing more with Harbaugh coming back? Will the offense look more like before Penn State? I don't know if it'll be more. I don't know if the frequency really changes. I still think that's game to game and like what's working and what's not. And Iowa certainly has a very stout defense and they don't score very much. So I wouldn't expect Michigan to take a lot of chances, but I'm starting to understand and be fully on board with the idea that JJ is better with Jim Harbaugh on the sideline. I don't think there's any question. I feel like, I don't know what it is. He's made some, I mean, dude, he had 3 of some of the most incredible throws I've ever seen in that Ohio State game.
Yeah.
Ohio State was pretty damn good, but Maryland and Penn State both, he was off, and it was the health. He's dealing with the leg injury. That's weird for a quarterback, and a lot of what he does is off script. And so I think there was several things kind of tied into that. But there's no doubt in my mind that Jim Harbaugh has a calming effect on JJ McCarthy when it comes to playing the position. I believe that more now than I did before these 3 games he was suspended.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think to say that there's no impact would be a disservice to who Jim Harbaugh. I mean, we heard the players talk about it. We heard JJ talk about it. We heard Blake Corum talk about it. Wanting to run through a wall, what the pregame speeches mean. The hairs on his arm standing up. JJ talking about the pregame ritual that we have. And sure, Jim Harbaugh has played the position. He played it at the University of Michigan. He played it in the NFL. I mean, this is a guy who knows that position, and so I certainly think that there's an impact to having somebody like that on the sideline. Now, in terms of what it means as far as what the offense looks like, I'm still of the belief that I don't know that the offense. Now, look, if Jim Harbaugh was on the sideline in Happy Valley, would Michigan have ran it 32 straight times? I'm not sure we would have seen that. But at the end of the day, I do subscribe to the idea that this offense gets into a game, figures out what the tone of the game is going to be, and then they adjust accordingly. And so if that means JJ needs to throw it a little bit more, he's going to throw it a little bit more. If it means that they're going to have to run the ball all night, I think they're going to run the ball all night. I think that's what's great about this Michigan football team is they're not a team that has to go out and sling it 40 times to win. They can beat you in a number of different ways. And I think that's what we're going to see on Saturday. It's just a matter of what is the flow of the game going to be? What's going to be required to win on Saturday? Will Jim Harbaugh's presence have an impact on that? I'm not so sure, but will it have an impact on, maybe how efficient? I mean, he was pretty damn efficient against Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like,
I was saying like, yeah, these last 3. And then I kind of started to think back. I'm like, he had like 5 or 6 incompletions, that throw to Roman, a couple to Cornelius, he had 3 throws that were like bananas in that game. And he only had 5 or 6 incompletions. He threw the touchdown, didn't turn it over.
Urban Meyer said he's never seen a ball like that. That touchdown pass to Roman Wilson. He said, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen a ball like that.
Special. special. And
Regardless
JJ,
of what you think of Urban Meyer, that's a pretty bold statement.
And I asked JJ about that on the player Zoom, and he said specifically number 25. Once he looks at the receiver, he never, like every rep they watched of that guy, he never looked back again. And JJ was like, I knew I could just let it rip right by his ear hole, and I was just like, dude, that's insane.
I mean,
that's
knowing that mentally is one thing. It speaks to the preparation, but being able to place that ball where he placed it, just absolutely incredible.
It's exactly what Kirk Campbell said today. Like almost verbatim what you just said. He said, yeah, the film study and the preparation was on another level, but the execution to be able to actually like, oh, this is what will work. Let me do it and rip a 90-mile-an-hour fastball right by the guy's helmet it's crazy, dude. Yeah, for him to see it, compute it, let it rip, and let it all happen in that moment in perfect, it's upper level stuff. It's like it's next level stuff. There's no question about it. Hadn't thought about this. Home of the NFL Combine. I might get a little run in this weekend, Chris. We're in Indy. Probably not. It's gonna be a little bit. There's gonna be a little bit going on down there. We'll see if maybe I can clear some space, see what they wanna let me do. But yeah, I don't know if that's gonna end up happening. It is a big question. It's not the time to ask it right now in terms of like in a public forum or to JJ or to the coaches, but hell, that's not where we're at. So I'll ask Chris, is JJ McCarthy staying or going? Michigan in general loses a ton off of this team, whether it's just seniors finishing or guys going to the NFL. And Sean says he's probably leaving, right? And I think that's where we both are. Chris, we haven't talked about this in a little while, but I feel like that's where we were before.
I would lean more toward slightly more toward leaving at this point, just because I feel like, the guy has worked himself into becoming a first-round pick in the upcoming draft. But at the same time, I saw somebody mention it earlier. He's making a lot of NIL dollars right now. And if he comes back and gets better for another year, I mean, you're talking about a guy that could be the first overall, the first quarterback taken, the second quarterback taken. And in terms of the draft and what that means from a dollars and cents standpoint, like you're going to make a lot more money at that level. And so I think all of those things will be factored. I think JJ's the type of guy who I don't think he's just driven to like, I got to get to the league type of guy. You know what I mean? And I think being a captain at the University of Michigan would mean a lot. If Donovan Edwards comes back, and I think it's probably a pretty good chance that he will at this point. I think, who the hell cares what I think, but I think he should, to come back, play another year with Donovan. I mean, you start looking at this roster and who they have and some of the younger guys that got a lot of playing time this year, they could once again be a formidable opponent. We look at the schedule and we get a little bit concerned about what that could mean. But if you bring JJ back, you bring Donovan back, you got Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and guys like that on the defensive side, like you can make another run at it. And I think a lot of that will depend on how this year plays out. I think it's far more unlikely if they win a national championship, because to me, it's like, it's one of those scenarios where you've done what you came here to do, and if you've worked yourself into a first round draft pick, maybe that's the thing that pushes it over the edges. We just won it all.
That's what I was going to say. For me, it's like the next month to, month and a couple weeks or whatever, the Big Ten title game, and then however the playoffs shake out. Like that's probably gonna weigh heavily on what he decides to do. I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there on the planet. Well, not anybody. I was going to address this. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that thinks Iowa's winning on Saturday, except for one of the jabrones on the Pat McAfee show. He's got Iowa winning 14. He's got Iowa winning 14-10.
I got a little 14-10.
I'm like, dude, have you watched any football this year? Like, I know Iowa's defense is pretty good, but come on, man. Like, come on. So anyway, I think these last potential 3 games, 2 very, very likely 2 games, but possibly 3, will have a big, big role in what JJ does. I think that was a good point, the way you put that too. Like, he's not like, got to get to the NFL. There are some guys like that.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as they can get there, they're going. We've seen a few of those at Michigan, actually. He's not one of them. And you're right, being a captain and coming back, and he's content in everything he's doing. There's nothing like immediately thrusting him off to the next level.
You know,
so
you got an NIL deal with Bose. You got an NIL.
he's doing all right.
You're doing all right financially, and I think there's a lot that goes into it, man. There's just so much that goes into it. My gut feeling says, as of now, it's a little more NFL than it is return. But again, I think how the season plays out will certainly have an impact on what decision he makes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I like this one a lot, Adam. Very specific, but given the two teams and what we've kind of seen this year, I enjoy this. What's more likely, a Michigan defensive touchdown or an Iowa defensive touchdown on Saturday? Chris, we've talked about this before, is that always kind of being a little bit of a crapshoot, but Michigan does have 4 defensive touchdowns on the year. Will Johnson almost got another one on Saturday. Iowa's been doing that all year long. Cooper DeJean is not playing in this game, and he's probably the guy most likely to do it for the Hawkeyes. But this is something that both teams have done a pretty good job at this year.
I think it would be more appropriate to ask what's more likely, a Michigan defensive touchdown or an Iowa offensive touchdown. But I'm going to say a Michigan defensive touchdown because I believe that the Michigan offense is far better. I mean, there's no belief about it. That's what it is. The Michigan offense is far better than the Iowa offense. I think JJ is going to take care of the ball. I think that they're going to – I don't think Michigan's going to have an offensive turnover all evening. And so – I do think that defense is going to play opportunistic. Whether or not Will Johnson is on the field, we'll have to see. But you still got big play Rod Moore out there. You got Mike Sainer still, who's always in the right place, right time. Josh Wallace playing great football. I mean, they've got guys. I mean, it could be Kenneth Grant who gets an interception. It could be Chris Jenkins. You know, you never know where it's going to come from. But I think that Michigan defense is going to be aggressive. I think that Iowa offense has a lot of problems. And just like I said with the game against Ohio State, I think that Iowa, in order to have any shot in this game whatsoever, they're going to have to force things to happen. They're going to have to force the ball down the field, and I think that's going to lead to some turnovers.
Mike Barrett's got a pick 6 under his belt a couple seasons ago.
How about Mike Barrett? You know, what was he? Second team coaches, honorable mention media, all Big Ten team, something like that. A guy that just didn't even mention him in the players that I was listing, a guy that continuously gets looked over, but also a captain on this defense and a guy who routinely makes big plays as well. And a veteran guy, you know, the winningest Wolverine of all time. He's won more games than any other Michigan Wolverine of all time. You know, you talk about players that you hope come back. You know, you're not going to get Mike Barrett back. That's a significant loss.
Won and played. I think they announced played more games than anybody else too, which I mean, kind of goes hand in hand. But almost had another big pick in the Ohio State game. If it weren't for Cade Stover making a nice defensive play, essentially, Mike Barrett would have had another one right there. So yeah, he's a playmaker. Michigan's got a bunch of them. Yeah, maybe Will Johnson plays, maybe he doesn't. But I'm with you. That's the first thing I thought of too. I'm like, well, I think Iowa's more likely to turn it over than Michigan. So I'd go that route. But you know, Iowa has been opportunistic as well. You remember the little clip that kind of went viral earlier this year with Cade saying, "I'm just not used to my defense scoring points." Like, come on,
guy, listen.
He just keeps putting his foot in his mouth, man.
Why does he just seem so awful?
I don't know.
You know, I put that in an article I wrote recently. I put it out. Like, I don't know if maybe I just, you know, sometimes you start to look at a person and everything they say pisses you off for some odd reason or another. And you're like, am I just looking at all the wrong things here? Am I searching for a reason to be angry? And I kind of feel that way when it comes to Cade McNamara. Like, I feel like every time I see him talking about Michigan, there's always just this tone about it that I don't really care for. And I get it. Like, probably doesn't have the best thoughts and feelings about Michigan. He doesn't think they handled his injury well. He lost his job to the guy behind him, and there was clearly some anger and some frustration about that. And he's human. So I understand why he would feel the way he feels, but you know, I don't know. He could have left on good terms.
It didn't have to go the way it's gone.
I'm very upset that he's not. I mean, how about that? The two Wolverines that transfer out to Iowa, not playing. We hoped for this matchup, not going to be playing in the game. Yeah. Both are injured. So it's a bummer.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, all the Michigan players that were asked about it said they were just super pumped and couldn't wait to see him. And I'm like, really? I don't know. But whatever. Anyway.
Well, I think there's something. I mean, Mike Sainer still, I think he talked a while ago about how Cade was critical in actually bringing him to Michigan, getting him there, you know? And so I do think there is some history there, and these guys know more about what happened behind the scenes than a couple of dinks like us will ever know. But, Yeah, I think generally speaking, if you were to ask the average fan out there if is Cade favorable, unfavorable, I think it would be far more unfavorable at this point.
Well, to your point too. I mean, if Cade does have a beef, it's not with Mike Sainristil or 50. He might not love JJ McCarthy, but it also would. It's not personal. They didn't like dislike each other as human beings. But he's salty. He lost his job to him.
Is it possible not to like JJ McCarthy?
I mean, there is that. But yeah, no, it is an interesting dynamic. It's unfortunate that neither of them are going to be playing. 1 point on this question that Adam asked, because it's a good one. Jesse Minter said that during the offseason last year, Iowa was one of the teams that they studied to learn how to turn interceptions into pick sixes. Said that Iowa's been phenomenal at immediately turning into blockers and paving the way for the guy who gets the interception. And Michigan's numbers have been better at that this year. Mikey's got a couple. Will Johnson had one that was completely uncontested against Minnesota. He just stepped in front of it and down the sideline he went. But I thought that was interesting that Jesse Minter shouted out Iowa as one of the teams that they watched. How fast they turn from defender into blocker when they do get a turnover. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, they are both good at it. And so I think that's what makes for an interesting question there. But, I mean, I can't remember Iowa's quarterback's name, but he's hilarious.
Deacon
Hall?
Is it Hall giant baby. Deacon, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. There's a Deacon in there somewhere.
He's more likely to throw it to the other team than JJ, I feel like. So that's where I'll stay with that.
There you go. Deacon Hill. Deacon Hill,
yeah. Another good question here. Obviously, we didn't get to see it for – it was more than a quarter, but Zach Zinner going down is major. I mean, he's one of the best guards in the entire country, so losing him is certainly bad. But Michigan has built out this offensive line with incredible depth all year long, and you go back to last year, so you grab Trente Jones and you throw him out there, and you're like, well, let's see how he does. Well, he started half the year last year on the best offensive line in the country. He goes in for one play this year. They have their longest run of the day and score a touchdown. I mean, it was just another kind of picturesque, storybook type of thing. Right when Zach Zinner gets hurt, the next play is a long touchdown run for Blake Corum. But it sounds crazy because Zinner is he's going to play in the NFL for like 15 years. The dude is rock solid. I don't even know if they're going to miss a beat. It's insane to say that, but I don't know if it's going to be that noticeable. Carson Barnhart is super versatile, super athletic. You can, Sharon talked about he can play guard, tackle, left, right. It doesn't matter. So you move him in there, Trente back to right tackle where he's played a bunch. Keep it moving.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you're certainly going to miss his presence on the field. He's a captain, means a lot to this football team. But, yeah, I think to your point, this was one of the biggest talking points going into the season was how loaded they were at offensive line. They go in the transfer portal, they pull out, a consensus first team, all Big Ten, and Drake Nugent at the center position. I mean, they have done a hell of a job in stacking that offensive line with depth. And I think Trente Jones can fill in just fine. I think Carson Barnhart can do obviously a great job. They've got guys that can step in. And to Brandon's point, I don't think the offense is going to skip a beat.
Gio Hottie has played both guard spots.
Somebody who got played big minutes last year.
Yes. It sounds like, Sharon Moore was pretty open about it. He's like, yeah, I thought, we went to that next group and that's the look we're going to get. So I would assume that's what it's going to look like. You'll have Barnhart at right guard and Trente at right tackle. And, if someone's struggling, maybe you still have you still have Miles Hinton who played right tackle. Or you've got plenty of pieces to move around and find out what's going to work. But I think we're going to see exactly what we saw, immediately after Zinner went out. And that was Barnhart at right guard, Trente Jones at right tackle. They're both super comfortable there. And if Barnhart wants to play at the next level, it's probably at guard. He's only about 6'3". He's not super he's not one of these hulking guys, but he's very athletic. He can pull, he can do everything you need to do from the guard spot. So that may end up being a blessing in disguise for him. He's going to get some run at right guard in 2 or 3 of the biggest games of the year. It might send him off to the NFL with some really good tape. So anyway, I think Michigan's going to be fine. The depth they've had at offensive line all year has been unmatched. I mean, we talked about it. They literally had you could take their backups and that group would start at many places in the Big Ten. Like, they're good, man. They're solid. Cody, I've been thinking, I watched the ranking show last night. There's a lot of scenarios that could play out weirdly this weekend. His question is, and I think we could just kind of take it, not even with this specific caveat that he has. If Michigan was the only game on Saturday, who are the other 3 teams you'd put in? I don't even know if you need to limit it to that. There's going to be some interesting things that happen. Obviously, it depends on who wins. Georgia, Bama, the winner. I don't know if Georgia's going to win that game. Bama's playing a hell of a lot better now than they were earlier in the year.
Agreed.
Washington and Oregon. I think Oregon's playing better than Washington now when they lost.
I'll tell you earlier. What. Out of any team that potentially scares me in the college football playoff, it's Oregon right now.
Oregon.
They're top of the list right now. That is a team I don't want to play because I think that is the one team that can get Michigan out of the style of football that they want to play. I think Michigan can play their brand of football against Georgia. You know, if it was Bama, if it was Florida State, if it was even Washington, I think Michigan can impose their will. Oregon makes me a little bit nervous.
Bo Nix it's a lot like JJ. He's got it between the ears. He's a good athlete. He's very accurate. He can throw from all the different platforms. They got a ton of speed at receiver. They got fast backs. Their defense flies around. Michigan's defense is better. That's where I think they would have the edge. But that one, dude, these 6-8 teams right here that are all going to be battling for these 4 spots is pretty crazy. The parity this year, because there's not really like a head and shoulders favorite.
Yeah, I could see a playoff game with Oregon looking a lot like what we saw last year with TCU, where now you've got a Michigan team that isn't, they have to score 40 plus, which concerns me a little bit because that's not who Michigan is. That's not what they want to do.
Well, what makes the most sense is if the correct teams win, and I say correct by just the ones that are ranked there now. You have Georgia beat Bama, they're 1. You got Michigan beat Iowa, they're 2. Washington and Florida State both win. Who's 3 right now? Is it Washington?
I don't have the rank.
I think Washington, right? They're undefeated. And Florida State's also undefeated. So you've got the 4 undefeateds. If they all win, that's probably your final 4. Washington is the underdog against Oregon.
Yeah.
And Florida State's playing Louisville, who's not as good, but they don't have their quarterback. So, and I don't know if Georgia's beating Bama. So there really could be some.
I mean, are we going to see Ohio State once again backdoor their way in? Or are they officially out?
I think they are. Because they're not playing and the other teams that are playing have so much to improve on their resume with. If Bama beats Georgia, if Texas wins again, like they're going to be able to bolster you'd then have a 1-loss Bama, 1-loss Texas, 1-loss Ohio State, and Ohio State didn't play this weekend.
Right.
Those other teams did. And I just don't think there's any way Ohio State's backing in this.
Then you get Ohio State's loss was such a great loss. You start to get, we saw it happen last year in I don't know, man. I've seen it already. The fans are sort of clamoring for chaos.
It can't happen again.
They can back their way. That's how I feel. It can't happen again. You allowed Ohio State to do it last year. They had a shot to get in, over Georgia, screwed it up, lost it. You can't do that the second straight year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, Washington's at 3, Florida. So you've got the 4 undefeated. Yeah, I was right. Isn't there another undefeated? Yeah, it was Ohio State until this past.
So let's say Oregon wins. Mm-hmm. Oregon beats Washington.
Yep, they're in. They're in.
Oregon's in. So you've got. Yeah, man. I don't know because I'm not positive about Georgia, Bama. I mean, I'm positive about Michigan, Iowa. Pretty damn confident Michigan's going to come out on top. Not sure about Georgia, Bama. Not sure about Washington, Oregon.
It's not all that crazy to think that Michigan is the only undefeated team remaining after this weekend.
Yeah.
Georgia could very easily lose to Bama. Washington could very easily lose to Oregon. And Florida State could lose to Louisville. I mean, I think Florida State's probably going to win. That backup quarterback they have isn't bad. And now he's got like a full week of prep and getting ready to play. And Louisville, they're just better than Louisville. But Michigan could end up being the only undefeated team. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 one-loss teams who have beaten each other. It's it could get wild.
Wild.
It could get wild for a little bit.
That 14 playoff.
Let's just put Ole Miss in there. Let the Lane train get busy for a little bit at 10-2.
Whatever you do, just don't put Oregon against Michigan.
Man, I'm so excited to watch these games and see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, what a big weekend of college football.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah,
Isn't there? There's one on Friday. It starts on Friday.
Oregon, Washington Friday. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome, man. Can't wait. Matt Kirby, that's a phenomenal question. Used to have some Sparties hanging out here. Some Buckeyes used to have. Where'd they go? Where'd they go?
Where would you be right now if you were a Buckeye? I wouldn't be here. Ooh, I gotta ask you a question. I haven't seen it come up in the comments, but it's something that has been grinding my gears a little bit over the last handful of days. We talked about it on Monday. I think I brought it up to you. It looked to me like Connor Stalions was there in person at the Barstool set, having Dave Portnoy a note, and then we've seen all these other Portnoy videos come out where he's touring pizza places around Michigan, and a gentleman, that looks like Connor Stalions tagging along with him. And you've got a lot of people in the Michigan fan base that are just absolutely loving it. And I am like, I don't know if it's maybe a boomer type take or whatever, but I'm like fucking, like, I don't want to see this guy ever again. Yeah. I don't understand how he's become this. Now, I get it. Again, I understand Twitter, not a real life, social media, not real life. But how is it that people are celebrating this dude when you have your head coach got suspended for 3 games, said he didn't know anything about it, would never condone it. Yet another member of the staff loses his job over this stuff. You have Michigan under NCAA investigation. Why are people celebrating this? Why is this like a running joke? Like, it's cool that he's palling around and wearing Michigan gear. Like, I don't ever want to see the dude again. Like, he nearly derailed what has been an incredible year. I don't understand why people are celebrating him. Do you get it?
No, I don't. And we still don't know the final repercussions. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next year or the year beyond, or, we've thrown out the vacated wins idea, all that. We don't know yet. It's not over yet with the NCAA. So, yeah, I don't understand. I get
Brandon Montgomery from the Facebook page. Yes, I get it. We all hate the NCAA. But to me, that's like, well, Connor Stalions was doing things he shouldn't have been doing, and nobody on staff reportedly knew about it. So you can hate the NCAA and also look at Connor Stalions like, what the fuck were you doing, dude? Like, you got Harbaugh suspended for 3 games. Like, you caused an issue here around the program. Not to mention the LLC with Blake Corum's, name or logo or whatever it is on it. Like, it just seems like this guy was up to a lot of strange things. Like, to me, it's weird that he's being celebrated by a segment of this fan base. I don't get it.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, we've talked about that for a little while now. How it was like, this guy may have almost single-handedly thrown Michigan's program into a spiral. And that's, what are we doing? What's good? What is anything good that he's done? Because clearly they just won these last 3 games without any of whatever he was doing. So what the hell did he do? And what
Connor Stalions is the GOAT in the comments here.
Yeah,
it's a weird energy to me. It's weird.
No, he's not. All right.
Yes. Well, okay. Here's the thing. You're saying Partridge didn't lose his job because of Stalions. In a nutshell, yes, he did. Yes, he did, because this whole mess was created
all of this
by what he was doing. So to say that Stalions had nothing to do with it, I mean, that's like saying Jim Harbaugh wasn't suspended because of Connor Stalions. Like, it's all has to do with what this guy was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird. It's
a manifesto, weird. For God's sakes. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Oh boy. All right, I like the question, CJ. To me, it's a pretty obvious answer. What's the most favorable matchup for Michigan in the first round of the playoffs? It's Florida State. It's Florida State without their starting quarterback. And when you look at the rankings, I'm wondering if there's a way that Michigan could play them. If Bama beats Georgia, Michigan would jump to 1. Would Florida State stay at 4 if they win? I mean, does Bama jump all the way? I mean, I don't know. We don't know how the committee's going to react and move teams if Georgia does lose, if Washington loses.
I think I was going to say there's so many variables that it's hard to say like if X, Y, and Z happens, because you could have two of those teams win, two lose, and you have to see how these games play out. But the most favorable matchup for sure is for Michigan to play Florida State. I don't think there's any doubt. You don't want to play Georgia. You don't want to play Bama. You don't want to play Oregon.
If Oregon wins Friday, Michigan's probably playing Oregon in the first round, because I think they'll leapfrog Florida State and they'll be 3 and Michigan will be 2.
Yeah.
Unless Georgia also loses, then Michigan moves up to 1. Then you've got some. Then 2 and 3 would be Georgia, Oregon, probably. I don't think Georgia's gonna fall out if they lose to Bama.
Probably not. I mean, they've been at the top all year. To take them out, I mean, and you've heard, Kirk Herbstreit, who is usually pretty reserved, was dropping some F-bombs on a podcast this week, where he's talking about the best fucking 4 teams. That's who go in. It's not about, resume or what you think here. It's like, who do you think are the best 4 teams? And
I think that's trash.
Well, but he says specifically, like, that's what the committee was designed to do, was you look at this and you say, who are the best 4 teams? And it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where even if Georgia goes out and loses to Alabama, where all of a sudden in the final hour, they're going to say, okay, I guess Georgia's not one of the best 4. Like, Georgia's in regardless of what happens.
So it's funny. So in that example of the argument, I agree 100%. They're one of the best teams. I just don't think you can throw Florida State out like old news just because their quarterback, they're undefeated.
But you can, though, according to Herbstreit's line of thinking here.
I don't agree with it.
Yeah, Florida State, and it's like, okay, they don't have their starting guy. They didn't look all that great against who was it? Georgia Tech? No, they played
Florida.
They played Florida, right? And that was a bit of a battle, So there are a lot of football games to be played this weekend that are going to have a massive impact on how this looks. And I think the safest bet right now is the Wolverines.
No, there's no question. They're sitting pretty. I mean, like, no.
How good does that feel, by the way? How good does it feel to be sitting here at this point in the year and saying, yeah, the Wolverines, they're a shoo-in for the playoff?
Yeah,
it's nice.
That is nice. So of the
guys are on the outside looking in with tears in their eyes.
Of the top 8 teams, by the way, Ohio State's the only one not playing this weekend. All 7 of the other ones are Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Washington, Oregon, Florida State.
See, Eric Miller from YouTube says if Georgia loses, they're out. I
don't know how that's possible.
Wholeheartedly.
They're going to be 12-1 and not make it after beating. No, they're
12-1, being number 1 all year, and then all of a sudden they fall, out of the playoff.
I think what would be ridiculous, though, is if they lose to Bama and nobody else loses that's up there now, and Bama somehow jumps 5 spots.
I was going to say, okay,
Florida State.
If they lose to Bama and Bama beats Georgia, Georgia stays in the playoff. How do you not also find a room for? Now, again, it depends on how it all plays out, but it would feel like Bama would have a pretty good shot at that point.
Then it's probably Michigan 1 playing Bama 4 in the first round.
And I would hate that.
Yeah. And Georgia would play either Washington or Oregon. And Florida State's like, what the fuck? All we did was win and win.
Yeah.
Tough, man. It's gonna
be
maybe tough.
You know what? That might be a little bit of even it's crazy that even Bama, when they're bad, they're still an 11-win team. You know what I mean? We're like, you're kind of looking at Bama like, well, are they that good? Are they not that good? Like, they're still really good.
They're definitely not the Bama of old. They lost to Texas early in the year in Tuscaloosa, and they just had a freaking miracle against Auburn to get the win. So, but hey, a win's a win. They're 11-1. They're sitting right there, and they got a chance to redeem themselves in a major way against Georgia. Now, if Georgia takes care of business, it's a moot point because a lot of what's going to happen is going to stay right at the top, and there's not going to be that much to figure out. But if Alabama wins, that's the biggest shakeup of the bunch. And if you're Florida State, you'd be shaken because I don't know.
Because you still got to find room. If Alabama wins, you still got to find room for Georgia in the Final Four.
Bama from 8 all the way up to 4 and supplanting an undefeated Florida State. How can you justify that?
don't know.
I don't think you can, dude. That's wild.
It's a long way to climb.
Yeah.
But wouldn't we agree right now that, basically how many there's 3 undefeated teams in there right now, or 4 in the top 4? Okay, there's 4.
The top 4 are all undefeated.
So basically 5 through 8, those are interchangeable at this point.
Well, that's one of the problems. If you think Bama is as capable of beating Georgia with the parity the way it is right now, then I'm not completely sold on Ohio State, but Michigan did just beat them by a score.
Yeah.
And then you've got Texas, who's playing pretty good this right now too, and they beat Bama. Like, you have 8 teams and you've only got 4 spots for them.
Right.
Man, that 12-team playoff would be badass this year.
Well, you know what, Brandon? I'm going to say no to that, because I like the idea of Michigan only having 2 more games to win a national championship. I'm very much looking forward to a 12-team playoff in the future, but I wouldn't want to see it this year, because I feel like that would be – there's a lot of teams I wouldn't want to play on the way to a national championship. When you look at, who's ranked in the current top 10, I'm fine with it being just 4 for now.
Michigan would get a bye, right? The top is it the top 4 all get a bye?
I believe the top 4 all get a bye.
So Michigan would get a bye, but then you'd have like a home matchup with
I saw it. Somebody put out the bracket, and it was Michigan would play the winner of Texas and Penn State.
Yeah, there you go.
After a bye. So
7-10. Yeah, that's right.
Not ideal.
Well, this is before the conference championship weekend too. Obviously, you got to play.
Samuel, talking about just the college football playoff. I know they got to win 3 more times, but once you get in the playoff, you got to win twice.
All right. Well, that's so much fun to talk about. And looking at these teams up here, it's just cool, man.
Man, how much shittier would all this conversation be right now if Michigan had lost on Saturday? Like, that's what the Buckeyes are going through right now. Trying to go through all these mathematics and hope you can back your way in, talking about what should you do with your head coach, out there advocating for Ohio State to go after Michigan players in the transfer portal, praying that they have some sort of, the hammer comes down from the NCAA. Just what a terrible place to be if you're a Buckeye right now.
Is the second round of the 12-team playoff also at home?
Or is it that I don't know. That I'm not sure. I know the first round it's on site.
On site. I thought the second rounds and beyond would be at a neutral location, because I just saw someone say, "Well, Texas coming to Ann Arbor in December," but that's not how it would go.
Yeah,
it would be somewhere else. Yeah, everybody's saying no. Yeah, neutral site after just the first round. So even though that is kind of an interesting topic too. You'd certainly rather have the bye, but how badass would it be to be like the number 6 team and host a playoff game?
Michigan, Bama in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
In December.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
But
we digress, because we got some football to get through this weekend before any of this shit even matters. But it's certainly fun to look at. I mean, ESPN is doing hour and 2 hour long shows discussing exactly what we were just doing, because it's Joey
Galloway and Reese Davis just crying about Michigan's success, struggling to comprehend it. It's phenomenal. It's taken me a long time to realize it, but ESPN's been bad for a while. I mean, they've been. I saw something about how they handled Sean Taylor. There was some little mini documentary about that, and I don't know. ESPN's sort of falling out of favorability with me.
Well, I feel like they've been doing that. They just hire people to yell and shit.
And that's what I mean. It's more of like a circus clown show, sort of scream, be really loud, be controversial type entertainment. It's weird.
Yeah. So a couple super chats here chiming in what we were just talking about. Blue Heart, appreciate you. It's supposed to be the 4 best teams. That's where the debate lies. I would agree. Florida State without Jordan Travis is not one of the 4 best teams, but I have a real problem disregarding 13-0 conference champions. I just do.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Alabama wins, Texas wins, Oregon wins, FSU is probably out. Georgia, if they lose, they'll fall to 4. That's probably how I see it too. And if I'm Florida State, I'd be furious about that. But
and then you got Michigan, Georgia in the first round.
Yeah, because Michigan would probably go up to
Michigan would definitely go up to number 1.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Don't want that either.
And then Sean Bennett, thanks again. If Washington, Florida State, Bama, Texas all lose, does Ohio State get in? I really don't think there's a scenario where Ohio State gets in. I just don't, because you're going to have multiple one-loss teams that And Ohio State's the only one that didn't make it to their conference championship game. I just don't know how you can, but that's basically what they did last year. So I don't know. I don't think so, but
I just think
the argument would be, well, the only loss we have is a 6-point loss to the number one team in the country at their place.
Yeah, but you talk about the eye test. I mean, Ohio State, they're a good team. Are they one of the top 4 teams in the country?
The only reason we're not in the conference championship against Michigan is because we have stupid ass divisions that are going away next year. There are some arguments to make, but
let's not take anything away from Iowa now. 10-2.
Dude, if they didn't get robbed of that Minnesota game, they're sitting there at 11-1.
Yeah,
they're probably ranked they're probably number 9.
That really just speaks to the Big Ten West, though.
Well, yeah. They're probably at number 9 ahead of Missouri behind Alabama, which, wow, scoring 6.5 points a game or whatever the hell it is.
It's wild.
It is wild.
Behavior.
Let's see. All right, I'm going to throw a question to you, Chris. Sorry if I'm not trying to skip people, but it's you guys are too awesome is basically what I'm saying. There's 400 plus of you in here. I'm looking at comments from 7:18 p.m. That was 40 minutes ago. I don't know how I'm gonna get to all these. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you a couple questions from our burning question segment on Monday that we didn't get to. As we're done with the regular season now, Michigan again 12-0. Which Michigan player was way better, the most better that you thought? That's not correct, is it?
Like who's of the bunch?
Who is the most surprising player for you in the positive? Like, damn, didn't see that dude coming, played out of his mind. Wow. Who is that for you?
Oh, let's see. I don't know, man. There were a lot of guys that made some big, like you expect Blake Corum to play well. You expect JJ McCarthy to play well, guys like Will Johnson. I think to me it was the Alex Orji appearance on Saturday.
I'm sorry. I meant for the whole season. My bad.
Oh, the whole season?
Whole season. My fault.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
now that we're done with all 12 games.
You might have clarified that. I was kind of distracted here.
I didn't. The way I asked it was one of the worst ways I've ever presented a question before.
Let's see here. The most surprising from the whole season.
Yes.
I mean, expected a lot from KG coming in the year. I see a lot of votes for Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
Samaj Morgan, another great name. That's a guy who has had limited reps, but he's done a lot with the reps he's gotten. So I would certainly throw his name in the ring. I see some votes for Roman Wilson out there, but going into the season, I thought Roman Wilson was going to be, possibly do more than what he's done this year, and he's had a phenomenal year. So I don't know, man. That's a tough question. I might have to think on that a little. Do you have a guy in mind, a guy that sticks out for you?
I think I would go with Roman Wilson. I thought he would be good. We saw him be good in the past, and you were certainly very high on him before the season started. But I still think the way he comes out of the gate, he scores 3 touchdowns, then it's 2, then it's 1, then it's another 2. Like I just didn't really think he was that kind of every single week scoring a touchdown or 2. I mean, I love him. I think he's a great player. Yeah. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not 6'4". He can certainly run. I would go with Roman Wilson. I mean, he became a bona fide number 1 wide receiver that the other team absolutely had to fear every week. And I just don't know if I expect him to be that good. So I would go with Roman Wilson.
It's wild because there really is no weak link on this team. Like you look around in every guy. I mean, Mike Sainer still played out of his mind. I see people saying Josh Wallace. I mean, I think people expected Josh Wallace to come in once everybody learned Michigan nabbed him out of the portal. Figured he was going to be the starter opposite Will Johnson. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened. Rod Moore, injured early in the season, came on, made the biggest play, one of the biggest plays of the year against Ohio State at the biggest moments. Jalen Harrell, who, by the way, forced that bad throw. He's been getting after the quarterback all year. You look at the linebackers, Junior Colson, I think he's probably leading the team in tackles again. Haven't looked at the numbers. Last I checked, he was up top, but quietly going about his business. Mike Barrett. I feel like I'm doing the Jim Harbaugh routine now. I'm just going to list off.
I was just about to call you Jim.
You know, I saw a couple votes for James Turner, who would be a great candidate because we on this show have talked about how we didn't really have that much faith and didn't want to put it on his leg to go out and step up and win a game. And he certainly did that. So I think that question is so difficult to answer because it speaks to how good and balanced this team is all the way around. Everybody did their job and did it extremely well.
Yeah, it is a team from top to bottom. I mean, you got 400 people in here. We've probably seen 20 different names.
Yeah.
And you could make a bit of an argument for just about all of them. You know, you mentioned guys kind of starting out hurt and coming on real strong. It's tough too because Michigan did return 81% of its production. So a lot of the guys that were doing stuff last year, they're going to do it again next year, maybe slightly better. I think maybe that's where I come in with Roman Wilson. Like if you look at his 22 year and his 23, it's a big jump.
Yeah.
He's essentially the same guy. Yeah, sure, a year older. JJ's a year older, but I just think he took a monstrous leap from last year to this year. So that's who I would go with. And I hate to ask it, and I think it's probably a unanimous answer, but the flip side, someone we thought was going to explode or have a monster year and just didn't.
I'm going to plead the fifth. No comment on this one.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
It's unfortunate, but everybody's going to say the same name. And we love the guy. He's got a ton of potential still. It may end up being one of the biggest blessings in disguise because his bags were packed. He was ready to dip. And now Donovan Edwards might have to come back because I just don't know. He can't be on draft boards. Like, first of all, the running back position is not what it once was. So running backs are not valued how they once were in the first place. And the fact that he didn't have the year that he thought he was going to have and struggle. What does he have right now? Is it 2 touchdowns, 3? It's not a lot.
I'm not sure, but splitting reps with the top running back in the Big Ten, doesn't help. It's awesome to be a part of that tandem, and from a team perspective, they're doing everything that they need to do. But certainly he can go to the combine and he can impress, and he can go, he can rise up draft boards. But I just feel like the thing about Donovan Edwards is he's never had the opportunity to be the guy because Blake Corum has been there the entire time, and Blake Corum is, the numbers speak for themselves. One of the greatest running backs, arguably the greatest running back in Michigan football history. When you're having to split reps with that guy, it's going to impact your numbers a little bit. And for me, selfishly, I think it would be great to see Donovan come back for another year and see what he looks like as the feature back in Ann Arbor, because I feel like that's what his career path should look like. He should get that opportunity. And the idea that he would leave after this year with the small sample size we have from him, although there's been incredible moments. We saw it in the Big Ten championship game in 21 where he threw the touchdown pass and the big runs against Ohio State last year. And he has been responsible for some of the biggest plays that this group of players have made over the last few years. But I want to see him be the guy. I want to see him be the feature back. And if he comes back next year, he will. And certainly, look, if JJ McCarthy decides to come back, I feel like those two guys are going to have some conversations, and that might also sway some things.
Yeah, blank name, not a bad point. Donovan is certainly on draft boards. Chris Evans got picked in the 6th round. I wouldn't say a much lousier version. Chris Evans was pretty damn good at Michigan too. Really exploded onto the scene as a freshman. Then he was suspended for a while. Whatever. There were some things that happened to Chris Evans while at Michigan that certainly affected his draft stock. But my retort would be, is that what Donovan's going for? 6th round pick? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So, I mean, it's not a bad point that you make. He might be on a draft board, but if you told Donovan, like, hey, 6th round, cool. I don't think he's cool with that. He's better than that.
Right.
And a year as the guy, to Chris's point, would prove that. He would get a chance to put that on tape and stay, for one more for his senior season and potentially jump 2, 3, 4 rounds. I mean, he could end up being a 2nd or 3rd round pick, I think, talent-wise, if he was given that opportunity. So it's not a bad point, blank name. That's weird that's what I have to call you. But I'm positive that he aspires to be a better draft pick than that. So,
yeah,
I don't know. That's an interesting one. And I'm not going to lie, dude. It took one play for me to be excited about what Alex Orji might be able to be if you pair him with a guy like Donovan Edwards back there. I mean, it was certainly JJ's JJ. If you could pick, who would you rather have your quarterback be next year? It's 1,000% JJ McCarthy. But Correct. If he does decide to leave, dude, Orji, dude, just that one run. I was like, I just want to see that dude get out in the open and just go.
Listen, we know that he can run. I want to see, like, can he throw like a few passes here and there? I just want to see him sling the ball around a little bit because you know he's got an arm on him. But yeah, I mean, certainly, I think this offense has the opportunity to be special next year. Orji can play a part in that. Certainly, if JJ comes back, Donovan Edwards, Samaj Morgan. I mean, you've got guys. The offensive line, the depth that's there, you're going to see that come to fruition next year when they reload on the offensive line. They have a chance to be special again next year. So we got to – I don't know that it is false hope, Mike. I'm not so sure that it's a certainty that JJ's gone.
I was just going to throw that up there because, Mike, look, here's the deal. Well, Chris and I both said we're saying he's probably gone. We're both leaning that way.
Leaning it, yeah.
But there's a difference between leaning and for sure. Caleb Williams, he's going pro. Drake May, he's going pro. Like 1,000%. I can't say that JJ's going 1,000% because I'd be lying if I said that. I don't know that, and I don't know if I think that. I think it based on what he's done, and again, certainly these next few games will play in, but I don't know if he's leaving for sure. I really don't. Yeah. I think there's a chance.
And I've said. What I said before, I mean, NIL, for all of the complaining that people have about it, and a lot of it is justified, NIL is also playing a role in keeping guys like JJ McCarthy at the University of Michigan possibly for another year to be able to develop. I don't think there's any doubt that if he comes back and plays another year, he's probably going to be a higher pick than he would be this year. It's a pretty deep draft class as far as the quarterbacks are concerned. And being a captain at the University of Michigan is something that I think will weigh on his mind a little bit and something he can see. He seems like a guy that cares about that type of thing. And so we talked about it earlier in the show. It doesn't, to me, seem like JJ is in a situation where I got to get to the NFL as soon as possible. I got to make this happen. Like, he knows it's coming. There's some things he wants to accomplish at the University of Michigan. And we saw it with other guys. We saw, Blake Corum decide to return. Zach Zinner decided to come back. Like, guys that were for sure draft picks. I mean, they set up the one more year fund to bring a collection of guys back. Something tells me that if there's a debate to be had, we're going to see a one more year. Can you imagine how much money a one more year fund will bring in for JJ McCarthy and Donovan Edwards? I mean, I got to think it would be pretty significant.
Yeah, and I saw a couple other people in the comments, which is something we've talked about before. This is a really good draft class for quarterbacks. JJ's, anywhere between probably the 4th and 7th quarterback, depending on where you look. Now, we're all going to say he's probably better than that, but it's a really deep quarterback draft class. And if he comes back next year, he's probably the number 1 quarterback on the board to start the season. Now, things change.
Heisman favorite.
Yes. Guys climb and, things happen throughout the season, but he's going to be in that discussion as the first quarterback off the board as a senior. All of the success that he's had, like there's a lot of moving parts with JJ McCarthy's decision. Probably first and foremost, what happens in these next 2 to 3 games. I think that's the biggest factor personally. Going to be interesting and fun to watch. Then you've got the transfer portal. There's already a couple really good quarterbacks in the transfer portal. If JJ does decide to go, I mean, Michigan's a pretty attractive place to play because of the way they win, because of what's been built there. I mean, yes, now you get into Harbaugh's future and the infractions and this year from 23 to 24 is going to be
a wild ride.
It's going to be a wild ride. There are going to be so many things that happen.
No matter which way these decisions go, all of us are going to be there's going to be a lot of emotion attached to it because it's going to carry a lot of weight for what next year looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably going to be the most influential, the most changes of any. Yeah, one season to the next since Harbaugh's been here. I know like 2020 to 2021 was just crazy because COVID was insane and that season was weird and they weren't good and he cleaned house a little bit. But I feel like, especially since they were so good this year, all the changes that are likely coming is going to be a lot to process and figure out.
And quite honestly, I mean, I see some people in the comments saying, next year is going to be rough, yada, yada. Like, I think that these decisions are going to be the difference between, 11 or 12 wins in the regular season again versus, 7 to 8 wins. It could swing that much.
Yeah.
The schedule is brutal next year. And then you've got, the divisions are gone, the college football playoff expansion. There's just a lot that's happening. And so, yeah, I think to Brandon's point, this offseason is going to be very consequential for this program moving forward. We don't know what the NCAA is going to do. Don't know what Harbaugh is going to do. Don't know what JJ is going to do. Don't know what Donovan's going to. I mean, you go down the line, there are a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of things that are still to come, and no shortage of things to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's that's what I was just thinking. I was like, if you could make a bullet point list of like topics, there's like 40. Yeah. There's so many things that are going to be talked about from this season to next, with the scheduling changes, the conference realignment, the lack of divisions, the expanded playoff, NIL continuing to grow. The transfer portal is going to be bigger. Harbaugh, I mean, like, dude, the list is humongous. The list is really, really crazy. And the crazy thing is a lot of other teams are starting to figure this shit out now. And Michigan's got like another month and a half of actual football to worry about first before you can even really start getting into any of that other stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a whirlwind come. What is it? What's the first playoff game? Is it like January 3rd or something?
No, I think the first one's January.
Is it the 1st?
I think it's on New Year's. Yeah.
Okay, on New Year's Day. So yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a ride. It is going to be a ride.
No doubt.
I just realized I unplugged the old soundboard for the outro music. Not that matters a lot, but I was charging my phone instead. So apologies. Anything else from anybody out there, Chris included? What else? I mean, Friday will be, the day before the Big Ten title game. We'll be doing our predictions. We'll talk a little bit more about Iowa. We haven't done that a lot. But it's coming again, dude. We're going to Indy.
Yeah, I mean, per the usual. It's just the way it works around these parts.
That seemingly is how it works.
I need to get healthy. I need to get some vitamins in my body. I need to get some, I need to go through like a whole cleanse.
We did TFG on Monday, folks. We did TFG on Monday.
TFG was Monday, and if you missed it, you missed a lot of. Or maybe they're just calling us TFG.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, I said the whole entire Ohio State fan base, and you said
the whole team for their pregame antics.
Oh yeah,
including Ryan Day.
I actually put that into a standalone article because I thought it was just
clown show.
Great discussion. So
just a clown show.
Well, we'll be back Friday night, 7:00. Like I said, a little bit more of a focus on Iowa predictions.
Maybe we'll get Trent back in the house. I mean, he's always good for some stats. Bring us. What do we really need to know about Iowa other than they're not as good? Yeah, Rob, some Pedialyte for sure, some edibles, whatever it takes to get me to 100%. I'm all in.
There you go. Yeah, we'll check with Trent. I mean, again, yeah, he's daddy duty. Sometimes he's got some different things going on. I mean, he's slinging
numbers. We need some substance here.
He's slinging bowling balls and dude. Every time I think about what Trent's doing, like during the day, I just see like the Big Lebowski. That's Trent's life. Love it. I'm not sure if Trent's a drinker. I would guess not. Another salt of the earth guy.
I don't think so.
But just pounding White Russians, spraying shoes, chucking balls.
Maybe we'll get him drunk in Indy. We'll see what happens.
Love it. That's a good way to end the show. Take care. We'll see you Friday.